welcome to the Educator session. Today's topic is basically ethical hacking using Python. Why do we use Python? The world's fastest growing language. It's a language used by the masses and the classes both. And of course, it's very simple. But today's topic will basically touch on a very complex topic called as ethical hacking and what is hacking. And Python is only a tool. You could also do hacking using any other language which you're comfortable. If you could do with C#, C Sharp, you could do with Java, you could do with SQL injection, a lot of methods. Basically, the methodology of hacking is what we'll look at, and we'll also try to look at how Python helps a little bit, the OOD features of Python. So what is hacking? Hacking is a word which is well known to all of you, and the word hacking has got both positive and negative connotations. But obviously, the reason of hacking originally was not negative, but over the years, it has taken both the terms. Now, three things have to be very clearly explained. One is what is called as black hat hacking. One is what is called as white hat hacking, and one is a gray hat. So these three things has to be very clear. The white hackers or the pen testers are the people who get into systems with permissions and approvals, do checks and balances, test the systems, find vulnerabilities, sets, etc., and report it to the authorities under a very controlled environment. The black hat guys are obviously the guys you see in movies and all those stories about hackers, Kevin Mitnick and all that. They are the guys who try to harm the system or get out information and data and take organizations to a very difficult level. The gray hat guys kind of stay between both. That's very difficult to say where the black ends and where the white begins. But gray hat typically are people who would be looking at systems because of their expertise, who would understand systems, and then probably who would also try to find out vulnerabilities, and instead of exploiting them, they try to alert the authorities, the software vendors, and then some cases there are rewards for alerting and they get paid. Some cases the vendors accept it and they release patches and updates. Generally, the white hat guys and the black hat guys stay away from this kind of activity. The gray hat guys are bang in middle of the road, and that's what they try to do. And many vendors do respond and you hear patches and updates. Some vendors don't, and then there are other consequences. We will come to hacking a little bit more in detail once we proceed. Basically, OOD stands for object oriented design. So when we say object oriented design, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to understand it's a software programming paradigm. The black hat guy is depicted here, and of course the gray hat and the white hat guys you see in between. Python is an interpreted object-oriented high-level programming language with the dynamic semantics. See, basically Python is third generation, and it is interpreted as it is run. There is no compilation as such in Python. Of course, being 3GL has its own advantages, but it is primarily a high-level programming language. It was created by Guderosum in around 89, and it has been in use for about 30 years. But for the last 5 odd years, it has come up like anything, especially because of AI and all these things. It is object oriented, it is procedure oriented, it is high level language, it's easy to learn. As a matter of fact, learning Python is one of the easiest things you can do. I mean, you can write hello world in just one single line compared to Java or C++, which takes 3 to 5 lines. And a lot of good books on the internet. Features of Python, yes, simplicity. It is designed so that you think more of the code and less of the syntax. Obviously, open source. Open source meaning that you do get data which is free for download. You go to python.org and you can download your own version for your system. Portability, yes, can be written in one and shared across others, makes code sharing easier. Embedded and extensible. I mean, see, this is a beautiful part of Python. You can add codes from other languages, C, C++. As a matter of fact, SQL2 for databases, you can embed right into it and it will run it. Again, interpreted, I already mentioned this, tasks of CPU and memory are handled by Python itself. It's a pretty strong language, as a matter of fact, if you look at it from that point of view. Huge libraries, NumPy, Matplotlib, it keeps on adding. As a matter of fact, these libraries keep on adding, and you can choose from a huge set of libraries as add-ons. You can do that. Yes, the OOP paradigm, object orientation, helps break down problems of the world of code and provide security to obtain better solutions. Now, because of its OOP, we will just touch up what are classes and objects. What's a class and what's an object? A class is basically a collection of objects. Class basically is a superset. The object is a subset. Now, when you say, for instance, a phone, it could be a rotary phone, it could be a touch phone, it could be a cellular phone, it could be just about anything, And typically, an object is an example of the class, such as in this case, a handset, a mobile phone, which has a state and some behavior. When we say state and a behavior, see, it has its own uniqueness and it behaves in a particular way. So that is a state and behavior. Methods, again, methods are functions that describe the attributes and behaviors of an object. For instance, if I say a parrot, typically when you say a parrot, it's an object. The class is a bird, and a higher class could be, vertebrates, whatever. The parrot, when you first think about a parrot, it flies, that's an attribute. It maybe sings or it talks, that's another attribute, and it is green in color. It has got a long elongated body, 2 legs, 2 wings, and a head. So there are the attributes and the behaviors. Similarly, for a cellular phone, there is a body, there's a housing, there's a wiring or a circuitry inside, there's a casing, there are buttons, there's a screen. So those are the behaviors, and the phone is used typically for talking. But of course, nowadays cellular phones are used for much more than talking, for browsing, etc. So this is the object, the class, and a method. I hope this is pretty clear. The next part is inheritance. Now, inheritance, we all study inheritance in one way in our schools in biology. Basically, the child class, the object, inherits the habits or the behaviors of the parents. So when we say a bird, birds are classified in many different ways. A parrot is an instantiation. So the parent class has features which the child class or the objects do take it on. Polymorphism. Now again, polymorphism, it is the ability to exist in multiple forms. A single function can have multiple functions. For instance, when we say, okay, in this example, we are showing animal and deer and tiger. So they are both animal, but they have different features. In case of the parrot, for instance, all birds can, at least 90% of birds can fly, but all birds may not talk. Maybe most birds can sing or make some kind of a noise, yes, but parrots have a peculiar ability, they learn to talk. So that is something which a parrot has, which maybe a vulture or maybe an eagle may not have. So polymorphism means that it's a special feature. The parrot belongs to the category birds, but it also has its own feature as a talking bird. That is one example of polymorphism. Encapsulation, again, a class, it has got certain features which enables it to bind with the data. For instance, when we log into a office computer, you're an user, and typically when you log in, there's a username and there's a password. So the username and password is encapsulated together. Not everyone has the same, no one has the same username and no one has the same password, hopefully. So when we get inside, when you log in a user system, you log in with your ID and you log in with your password. So encapsulation is tied together. This is a very rough definition of encapsulation. Abstraction. Now, abstraction is basically simplifying. When we look at, a washing machine, for instance, there are a lot of components. There's a housing, there's a motor, there's a drum, there's a circuitry, there's a water inlet and outlet, etc., filter, etc. But when we look at a very simple thing, we do understand in a very simple way. There's a power button, there's a water level indicator, there's a timer. 3 things. Basically, you switch it on, water fills in, you use to wash clothes, and you waste on a time, and then they are dry. Class water level definition. See, water level is high and medium. Now, when we say high, that is one state, medium is another state, and low could be one more state. There's a time and a spin associated with it. Typically, there's a time function, there's a spinning function, and there's an insertion function where you insert the clothes, etc. This is a very broad definition of abstraction. What can be a good career option? Hacking or ML using Python? See, Python is a very powerful language, but I have used Python for some time. I've used Java also. I'm learning C#. I don't like C, C++ nowadays. And of course, SQL is one of my favorites. I've been using it for 10 years. And R as well. It doesn't really matter which language you use. But yes, Python being a third generation or a simple language, it has a lot of advantages, as we already saw. And Python libraries, etc., is powerful enough. So we do get into a lot of advantages on Python, and Python being simpler is used both for AI, ML, data sciences, and hacking. So it can be intermixed. But it is always preferable to learn at least 2 to 3 languages. Don't stick only to Python. Learn up Java, C#, learn up SQL. It's always good because you can embed and you can use tables. For instance, databases, RDBMS, relational databases, they're extremely powerful in SQL family. MySQL, DB2, SQL. Python may have those features, but then if you can embed an SQL based code into Python, it's even easier for you. Goals of ethical hacking. See, understand this very, very clearly. It doesn't matter what tool you use and what methodology you use and what language you use. Basically, what is important is the goal. Why are you into ethical hacking? Think very deeply. The first thing is protect the privacy of the organization that has been hacked. Transparently report all the weaknesses, inform hardware and software vendors of the weaknesses. See, this has a lot to do with something called as integrity, compliance, and ethics. Now, these are very huge subjects, and we cannot
take them very lightly. When you're getting into, it's as simple as you are going to somebody's house and trying to get inside the house and understanding the house and saying these are the vulnerabilities. It is something which is a lot of responsibility. It is something which requires a lot of trust, lot of high integrity, and a lot of honesty. So be very sure that you want to get into, if you have those behaviors and traits. And hacking is a very, very difficult career. It requires hours and hours of hard work and learning. If you are able to invest your time and your judgment and your capacity, it's a great field for you. If you feel, no, this is not my kind of stuff, and I'm better happy as a programmer, as a developer, or as a coder, that's a different story. That is also good. But once you get into the hacking, remember that it is a lot about the trust between two human beings or two individuals. One is you as an expert, and one is the organization or entity for whom you're going to get inside and do this activity. It is basically between two human minds. So that is something you have to be, be very sure. It's not about machines, it's about people. End of the day, everything is about people. There's a person at one end and there's a person at the other end. Okay. Transparently report. When you do a activity and you study all this, you have to be very sure that you understand the systems, you take helps of experts. Sometimes you may not have all the skill sets. You may have to call some experts who know, or some vendors who might, do some extra activities for you, outsource it. But the reports will be signed off by you and owned by you if you are given the responsibility, and it is your duty bound to transparently report all the vulnerabilities or the risks to the organization. Many times hardware and software vendors also will be involved. They may be in loop with the organization, or they may be with you. You should also inform them that there are the weaknesses. So these are the primary three goals: protect, be transparent, and inform of ethical hacking. Why ethical hacking? See, information is valuable. Please remember that. People get paid for information. You may be wondering that sometimes, you get this credit card people to call you, or real estate agents to call you. How come they get your number? The fact is that somebody has given your number to them. Okay. If you are leading a large company, if you're a manager or a CEO or even a small business owner, getting hacked, I did not tell you this. This is something which is all over the place. Just a week ago, Twitter accounts got hacked of a lot of famous people and all that. So this is a serious business, and many times it is not possible for the organization to figure out what the vulnerabilities or shortcomings are. And this is exactly where your expertise comes in as an ethical hacker. Now, the word ethical and hacking should always go together. While riding a two-wheeler, always wear a helmet. While crossing a road, look on both the sides, follow traffic signs. While driving or riding on a road, follow traffic rules. They have to go together. Now, what is a security threat? What's a risk? See, this cybersecurity field is linked with two very strongly related fields, which are risk management and security engineering. Security engineering is the science of securing systems, processes, people beyond cybersecurity. Risk management is the science which has direct application on humans, on business. Cybersecurity is a subclass. So cybersecurity is directly borrowing both from security engineering and risk management. And these terms of threats originate from risk and from security. What is a risk? Typically, when is a goal? You have an objective or a goal. For instance, if I say that my goal is to go from my home to my office in 1 hour, what are the risks? Risks is that I may not have my conveyance. There could be a traffic problem. Nowadays, of course, in India, you don't have traffic problems. All cities are working from home, so traffic is kind of reduced automatically. Or for instance, you say I may not get a cab, or my two-wheeler or four-wheeler won't start. So these are the risks. So anything which adversely impacts directly or indirectly the goal is a risk. And any risk that can harm is a threat. For instance, I say my goal is to study properly and score good marks. When I don't study properly, I play games, I watch too much of movies, I hang around with my friends. Of course, nowadays I don't hang around physically, but I may be playing online games and all that. So those are risks which will affect my performance in the exam. So anything which adversely affect is a risk. The security threats typically are physical and non-physical. When we say cybersecurity, do not think that everything is only digital. Lot of risks, for instance, server systems also have a physical risk. Somebody may come and do some harm, plug out a few cables, or insert some kind of malicious hardware which will harm it physically. Again, just we are trying to show you physical threats. For instance, when you look at your home, you don't open your door just to let anybody inside your home. You don't do that. That is not what is intended to.
So you don't do that, and you should not do that. The door is, for instance, an internal physical risk. There are external risks, human risks. Of course, people, you may sometimes you find people who are hacking into systems who are ex-employees or current employees. So it's not that everything physically has to be with a hardware system or a physical asset-based proximity kind of a thing. It can be humans as well. Okay. Non-physical threats, yes. Worms, viruses, trojans, spyware. These things are very much common nowadays, and these terms have been around for at least 25, 30 years. A worm is something which comes inside a system and it does damage. A virus also does the same thing, but like a physical virus or a biological virus, it replicates very quickly and brings entire systems down. Trojans, these typically Trojans borrow from the Ulysses and the Trojan War, Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey, where Trojan is a software or a system which masquerades or acts as if it is harmless, and it slowly activates and harms from inside. Spyware is basically things which spy upon you and figure out what you're doing. Now, types of threats. We have kind of tried to show a very simple definition here: viruses, lockups, identity theft, slow response, crashes, rootkits, worms, pop-ups, etc., etc. There are many, many more. But yes, these are just a simplification of what can happen. There could be threats like ransomware and many other things which we are not aware of. There are even threats which happen over Wi-Fi's and wireless networks and all that. It's not always something which is wired onto it which we are dealing here, but it is possible. Yeah, and this portion, preventive measures. So once these risks and threats are there, how do you basically try to address them, and how do you try to stop them? And the whole business of hacking, the whole business of cybersecurity is basically trying to protect somebody and helping them out. Now, an organization must have logical security measures. It's a very broad definition. Even the Pentagon, the FBI gets hacked a few thousand times every day. The FBI website, the Pentagon, the US Department of Defense website gets hacked a few thousand times every day. So it is not that it is very simple, and you cannot tell that they are not serious about the cybersecurity business. They are. The United States government is, but that doesn't say that you can always be safe. There is something called as reasonable assurance. An organization must have some kind of cognitive cybersecurity. When you say cognitive, see, cognitive cybersecurity, the word cognitive means you're able to think on your own. You should not believe and depend purely on somebody else to come and help you with cybersecurity. You should have cognizance, your own sentience, intelligence to figure out how do I handle cybersecurity. Authentication methods. There are a lot of methods. Typically, the simplest method what we look at is a user ID and a password, biometrics, smart cards, etc. But believe me, everything which has been discovered can be broken. And many of these black hat hackers from China or maybe from India or probably Middle East countries and Israel are very qualified people. Most of them have advanced degrees and many of them have a military background. So whatever you build, there are always people thinking behind. And many gray hat and white hat hackers also are highly qualified people with a very adequate experience and qualification who figure out and help. Your job is to be the latter, to be a white hat hacker or a gray hat hacker. Your job is not to become a black hat hacker. Efficient systems, PDS, yes, it is possible. Typically, some measures we have shown here: human aspects, antivirus, spyware, firewalls, cryptography, dataware, encryption. There are a lot of other things. But this is what we're trying to look at. Which OS is better for hacking? See, an OS doesn't hack. An operating system is something which runs a computer. You hack into an OS. You don't use a OS for hacking. So there's nothing particular as an OS for hacking. There are tools for hacking, for systems hacking and for wireless hacking, but hacking is basically a set of activities to protect. See it in that way. So I will not recommend any tool, but there are multiple tools, freewares and paid tools. How to know someone had hacked in? You should be careful. You should run your security patches regularly, and you should have a good security patch installed. AI and ethical hacking. See, AI, machine learning and security, AI is a huge science and it can be used together, but it has got its own challenges. You have to be very good in machine learning and AI. There are clustering and methods and statistical tools and techniques and add-ons in Python. But it is like telling, can I use AI and ML for cybersecurity? Definitely yes, but it is a bit tricky. You have to be good in both the fields. It is like you're a good football player and you're a good basketball player. Can I combine both? Yes. But the question is, you should know football and basketball that well. What is a logical security measure? You have a house. Logically, when you sleep at night, do you close your door? Do you close your windows? Do you lock everything? Or you simply sleep? You will tell me that I lock it and I'm sure that nobody has entered my house when I'm sleeping. That's a logical security measure. these are some of the methods we recommend. End of the day, it's a lot of things on the safety, and the persons in the system, they should be prepared. These are some methods, but remember, if people are not properly trained, and a short example I'll share. I used to audit across different places in the globe, in Asia Pacific and US, Germany and Australia and all that. Many times we have seen when we go as auditors and we go to an employee and we go to an organization, and then we sometimes ask the employees, can you show me, can you log into the system? And they do log in, and sometimes we say, can you share your password? You will be very surprised. Many times people inadvertently tell us our password. They tell us the password and says, oh, this is my password. And for us, that's a very, very a funny situation, but then we have to tell the local management that this is something which is not acceptable. When somebody asks your password, would you give a bank password? Would you give a personal Gmail password or a Yahoo Mail password or Hotmail password? No. So you should have this. End of the day, people can be defeated. These are all methods and checks and balances. But end of the day, the humans involved should be very, ethical hacking skills, HTML, JS, PHP, SQL, Python, Bash, anything. In-depth knowledge. See, the whole game is not the language, it is not the system, it is the knowledge. Networking knowledge, system knowledge, computer knowledge. Knowledge is something which you have to develop. You have to spend hours and months, sometimes years. It took me a lot of time to understand. I'm telling my example. I have a lot of friends from my community who spent literally years, and after 12 years I just think I know 5% or even less than 5%. It's a huge world. I have a computer science background, I have a information security background for 10, 12 years, but still I'm figuring out that after 10, 12 years, I've learned hardly 5%, hardly 2 to 3%, maybe. So this is something which is a long-term thing. Today you can download, you can learn. This is a continuous learning process. Okay. Why to learn programming? See, programming helps. Many people don't know programming and they're pretty good auditors as well. So it's not that you should always know programming, but programming helps. Knowledge of computer science, knowledge of operating systems, networks, wireless systems helps typically. And you can write good codes. I mean, I love writing codes in SQL. For example, one of my favorite languages is SQL, and SQL creates fantastic code. It's, by the way, a fourth generation language. For those of you who are already familiar with SQL or MySQL or DB2, you can write near English commands in it, and you can do fantastic things. But there's something called SQL injection, for instance. It is a way where people write malicious SQL code to damage or destroy. This drop command and delete command are very strong commands in SQL, and many people do write a timer based code which gets into a system and doesn't get activated, and fine morning it says drop or delete, and entire databases get erased. That is what we call as SQLi, SQL injection, and that SQL code can be embedded in Python. So there's a very tricky thing. You should be careful. You should know writing programs as a hacker. See, if you're a white hacker and you know programs, you also know how to appreciate when somebody's written malicious code. Helps you identify and exploit errors. Definitely, yes. You can customize. You can always strengthen. Many times people will say, okay, this code is not working. Can you help us? You can guide them. You may not code for them, but you can guide their development team as to how to do it. So we do recommend that learning programming is definitely good for. What are the ethical hacking tools? And again, a lot of tools. We are not recommending that you use these tools. These are popular tools we have just put for representation. We are not endorsing that you use these tools only. Some of them, XPath, Hashcat, etc. There could be many more. Some of them are free and some of them are paid. Generally, be careful with something which is free, because sometimes you may download it for free and start using it. Tomorrow you find out that somebody used that tool to hack into your system. You'll be happy practicing and somebody is getting your data. So be very careful about using these things and do this under controlled environments, under authorized environments. Okay. Generally, don't put a hacking tool in your home system. Be prepared to write off and dump the system if something goes wrong. And if you're using that system for financial transactions and all, God help you. So be very careful about all these tricks and balances. Hacking is literally like playing with high voltage current or like fire. Be very careful. Be very careful. Even though you will be certified and authorized, be very careful. There's no replacement for safety and prevention. Okay. Social engineering. See, social engineering, many times, this is a term you can always figure out. Social engineering is basically exploiting. See, we Indians, for instance, many of us in India, many of us in schools are Indians. We love to talk, we love to chat, we love to hang around with people and friends. Many people actually use that information to figure out a lot of things about you. You may not tell anything. For instance, somebody may join you and say he's a new employee or she's a new employee, and he may try to just figure out, hang around with you, go for a drink, go for a party and something, and gradually they will befriend you, and then they'll try to get information from you, and tomorrow you will find that that is being used against you. Sometimes over presentations we discuss things loudly when we travel. When you're in a bus or we are traveling on a train or a flight, we discuss, we open up. The moment a plane lands, we start calling people and say we have reached home, this number. Sometimes we openly say I'll transfer this much amount to your account.
Be careful of these things. This is the art of social engineering. Be extremely careful. Hackers are not people who always hack into systems, hardware, and software systems. They are people who are very smart, who are sitting right next to you, looking innocent, and they will try to figure out. Okay, so be careful. It doesn't require Python and Java skills to know that. You have to be very careful what you talk and when you talk regarding information. Be extremely careful. They gather the information, they plan it, they use the knowledge which they get from you, and then they attack you. So typically, they don't know anything about you and your system. They befriend you, they socialize with you, they kind of mingle with you and get the information from you. That is something you should be careful about. Techniques, familiarity, intimidating circumstances, human emotions, tailgating, phishing. Tailgating, you know, already know this. When you punch in and then somebody doesn't punch, he or she follows you unauthorized. That's called tailgating. Some techniques again, spear phishing, wishing, gather information over the phone, spear phishing. So these are all different English terms. The method is to get information, scareware. Your PC has been infected. Please click this, otherwise you lose all data. These are basically scareware. Sometimes you get these Nigerian calls. I want to transfer $1 million to your account. The Nigerian guy who's, you know, that Nigerian scam as we say, and then please give a password, give an initial upfront money. Don't fall into all that trap. Be very careful. Sometimes people say I'm stuck in a particular place. They may impersonate a friend or a colleague. They may hack into his phone and impersonate and send message from his phone. So be careful. These are very, very fine techniques. The people who are doing are very intelligent people. Please be careful on this. Cryptography, a very simple way we have tried to put it here. It's a huge science. Cryptography has been around in humanity for thousands of years. It is used in Europe in Julius Caesar's time and even before the Babylonians. It is used in Kautilya's Arthashastra and a lot of science in India, the Mauryan Empire, spies, networks, counterintelligence, cryptography, these are all related. This is one example where we replace, there are a lot of codes and ciphers. We're just showing one example, plain text. We take a text and then we put an algorithm or we put a substitute each key and then we get into a plain text. So we have something called as 2-key and 2-factor and 3-factor authentication, one way and two way. I send information to you and then you receive it. You can only decode it if you know the code. Otherwise, it is useless to you. That is the art of cryptography. Transmitting information between point A to point B so that a point C or anybody else cannot break into it. If they break into it, they cannot decipher it. It is used in military. It's there as a science from World War II. It has come in lot of other ways. These are some of the famous cryptography methods. RSA, they are the world's top guys. Ron Rivest and Shamir Edelman and all that. And AES, and the latest one is triple DES. That's the one. AES was used some years ago. SH is also one. RC4 is also one model. Typically, DES and RC4 are the advanced ones. SH also is, and there are more. There's a science called quantum cryptography also, which is coming in quantum computing cryptography. That's a very advanced science. Then there's something called as elliptical curve cryptography, where we use elliptical curves to use cryptography. It's a stronger methods. Cryptanalysis, again, how to decrypt the data. How to decrypt the data, you get over here. Techniques, we sometimes, the dictionary method, we substitute the words and then we try to say it here. See, Python is available on the website called as python.org. FireEye, Darktrace, Cylance, CrowdStrike. These are the world's top recent startups leading in cybersecurity. Darktrace, for instance, uses AI and cybersecurity. FireEye uses CrowdStrike is for endpoint protection. Visit these websites. You can note these names down: FireEye, Darktrace, Cylance, and CrowdStrike. These are existing companies. I'm not endorsing these companies, but these companies are doing a lot of cutting edge AI and cyber activities. Kaspersky, of course, Kaspersky India, and Kaspersky is one of the world's top firms in cyber, and Eugene is luckily connected to me in LinkedIn. So Eugene Kaspersky is one of the world's top experts, a Russian guy, and he's one. Attack.mitre.org. See, this is a non-profit organization. So what happens in Attack, Mitre is an organization where they do a lot of great work, try to identify threats and a lot of things in cyber, including hacking. And the Mitre has a Mitre matrix and enterprise matrix. This is a Mitre homepage, attack.mitre. Attack is a framework which they use. You can see it here. And for instance, for enterprise, these are very detailed areas for access, for execution purposes. And so these are privilege escalation discovery. These are collated based on best practices globally, and they have put it here saying these are the good things you should be doing, or these are the good things you should be careful, you should be watching out. So somebody's trying to hack, chances are he or she is trying to exploit one of these techniques. They are tied with a lot of organizations and groups, a lot of good resources here, and we have for mobile and enterprise. We have this customized techniques, we have tactics, and these matrices are published. They've written it fantastic, but please remember it may require some background. And of course, I'd still recommend, these are extra sites, UNO, And I'll show one more site here, and this is the NIST. The NIST is a US National Standards Institute, and NIST also has fantastic frameworks on cloud, on mobile, and security. They publish frameworks and documents. They are a US government site, and they're one of the world's best standard sites. This is the NIST cybersecurity page. You can go to NIST and just hit topics. You get cybersecurity framework, privacy framework, risk management framework, and you can, for instance, go to cybersecurity framework and go here. You can click here. They have this 4-5-point method which they call as identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So you can, and this is downloadable. It's like it's a 50 or 100-page document. You can actually literally go ahead and start reading. Nothing is going to stop you. You can start reading, but this takes time. I've been reading NIST since last 4, 5, maybe 7 years. I don't know, maybe more than that. It takes time, and these get constantly upgraded. So you have to keep upgrading yourself. When you said where to start with it. NIST. Start with, as I said, mid-range. Start with here and start reading and understanding. This may look initially a little intimidating, but it is definitely possible. And there's something called as compliance, risk management, and governance. So what is the OCEG? This is the FBI's page, cybercrime, what the FBI does and all that. Yeah, in India we have these courses. We have DSCI, NASSCOM's DSCI here, Data Security Council of India. We have CERT India also. We have this also here. When you do ethical hacking or using Python or whatever, you have to have a plan. You have to have an organization like a project plan saying what you will do, what are the checks and balances, where you will draw the boundaries, what you will check, what are the risks, what the clients want you to check, what is in scope, what is out of scope, then perform the activity, what you will be checking to what level of detail, within what time frames, conduct the activity, then document it, then you present the report to them, discuss with them, and you finalize the report. So this is something called the NIST forensic framework. What we say is CEAR. Collect the evidences, examine the evidences, analyze them, and then report them. But this has to be within a framework of a plan, like a project plan. Those of you who may have a PMP background or project planning background already know what a project plan is. So what is in scope and what is out of scope? What are the methodologies? And then that report has to be done, and that has to be documented and signed off from the client and you. Typically, if you're going to do it at home, obviously you don't have that expertise here. But if you browse through DSCI CERT, MITRE organization, and the NIST homepage, many of you may be wondering that is it okay if you browse once? Please don't. If you have to browse through MITRE or with NIST or with DSCI, you have to browse for hours. So only when you spend at least 2 to 4 months understanding and reading these frameworks, you will be ready. Be dedicated, and always, I will also in saying that go for a white hat or for an honest method. Have your integrity and morals high. Don't do activities which are illegal, because if you are getting into too funny things, the government is able to snoop you out. So tomorrow morning, if you have a bunch of law enforcement people at your home or the police, it is not a very nice situation which we recommend. That is one reason we are not showing actual code here. We don't want to do that. It's a legal risk on us as an organization. So that's about it. Stay safe, stay strong. Have a nice day.